Our story continues. When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He says, "Where have you laid him?" And they said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead for 4 days." And Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." The word of the Lord. Our Lenten sermon series has been called One-on-One with Jesus. All the gospel lessons through Lent have focused on Jesus' interaction with individual people. First, the adversary, Satan, Nicodemus, a blind man, a Samaritan woman at a well, and now Lazarus. The question for us has been, what insights can we gain for our faith journey from these interactions? What does Jesus want us to learn about our discipleship and our day and age from these relationships he had with these individuals? With this question in mind, let us pray. Unbind us, O God. Unbind us so that we can go. Go where you lead us. And all God's people shall say. One of Katie and my best friends is a fellow named Scotty who lives in Asheville. He's married. He's got 3 children under the age of 10. Scotty grew up in Sarasota, Florida. And one of the things Sarasota is known for is they have a circus in town there. And as a boy, Scotty joined the circus. I guess in the day he'd go to school, in the afternoon he'd go and practice with the circus. So I'm quite sure what I'm about to tell you is informed of a childhood embedded in circus acts. Scotty loves to climb things. Even as a 48-year-old man, anything good he sees to climb, he goes up it. And with 3 children under the age of 10, they follow suit. So Scotty and his wife and his kids came up to visit in February, and it was one of those first nice weekends we had, where you go, oh gosh, spring is coming. And so we all got on our bikes, my family, Scotty's family, and we headed over to the art museum. And if you haven't been to the art museum recently, they have just added a ton of outdoor sculptures and a beautiful section to the outdoor art there. And a few of the things that they have added are these giant girder sculptures that go 30 and 40 feet in the air. You know where this story is going. So Scotty and his youngest boy caught eye of these girders and made a beeline for them. And sure enough, up they crawled all the way to the top of these things. Yeah, I heard somebody go, ooh, back here. Ooh, and it was a pretty day, so there was a big crowd at the art museum. And Katie and I are watching this, and yeah, all the parental instincts and bells and whistles are going off. And we kind of turned around and noticed a crowd had gathered. And I was only imagining what was going on. And as people were whispering to each other, what kind of parent is that? Gosh, that kid, he better grab that kid. That kid's going to die. He's going to die. Somebody call the police. What's going on? The tension was palpable in the crowd around me. But one of the things I love about Scotty is his sense of adventure supersedes his sense of fear and maybe even death. And maybe that came from his time in the circus, but I love that he's free, and he knows he's climbed on things before in public places, and crowds gather and people judge. But Scotty's also a really responsible person. He takes time. He's a carpenter, and so he takes time teaching his kids about safety with sharp things. And I know he's spent time as he's been climbing trees or girders with his kids that he's taught them how to climb. That doesn't mean the danger's gone. It just doesn't rule his very being. And what I love to think about in that moment as he and his son were 30 feet up in the air and all of us were kind of tense, was kind of searching my soul. To go, why am I so afraid of death? Why are we as a group so ruled by fear? What has happened to my sense of adventure? Why did I create these boundaries? All those, what I think are marvelous questions to ask yourself every once in a while. Why do I do what I do? I don't know why the majority of us aren't up on the girders and are down here on the ground. Well, I think I know, but I think there are things that have come into our culture that may be not so great. I mean, one of them is, I think we're a culture obsessed with the prevention of a lawsuit. So I'm sure I'm going to go up to the art museum in 3 weeks, and probably because of Scotty, there's going to be some sign that says, do not climb on these girders. But I think sometimes, too, we're overly obsessed and fearful about what might be dangerous or harmful or what might kill us. Tied to this, I think bad news sells. Why is that? If we weren't buying it, it wouldn't sell. Somehow we're drawn to this. We're drawn towards our fears. the potential for death, real death, bad news, more than we are sometimes with the thrill of adventure or freedom. So I love thinking about my friend's child and he climbing up and rebelling, in a sense, from our probably our broader sense of cultural fear. And I think Jesus does the same in this passage. Jesus is surrounded, at least in this story, but I think in other stories too, of an obsession with death. We learn, yes, that Lazarus is ill, but Jesus needs to stay where he is for 2 days. But eventually he says to the disciples, all right, we're going to go. And the disciples, if you heard what Debbie read, say, hey, wait a minute, we just were near where Lazarus was, and you just narrowly avoided getting stoned to death. We don't think it's a very good idea to go back there. But Jesus says, no, we are going to go. And there's a great little line in there. Thomas, I wish I could hear his tone. I'd love to hear what his tone was when he said, well, I guess we'll go too, so he doesn't die alone. We'll die with him. And then they get back, and the theme of death continues. Both Mary and Martha say, if you had been here, Lazarus, our brother, wouldn't have died. And then we get that shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. And then we are told in a powerful sentence that Jesus was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved as he witnessed Mary weeping and the Jews who were with her weeping. And so the first thought is, like observers, gosh, he is compassionate, or he loved Lazarus. But if you get behind the Greek of those words, greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved, you learn that actually Jesus' mood was deep distress and even anger. You go, what is that about? And I think I have an inkling of an idea of why he might have been angry in that moment. Angry to the point, distressed to the point of actually weeping. Because over and over, death is being thrown at him. Illness is being thrown at him. Doubt is being thrown at him. He sees it all over culture. And what is Jesus continually trying to do? If you look in this text, he is constantly giving passages of life. He says, this illness doesn't lead to death, but it leads to God's glory. He says, Lazarus has fallen asleep. He'll be all right. Your brother will rise again. And then the ultimate phrase that we hang on to as people of faith. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. Do you hear it? Jesus is constantly speaking of life in communities that are obsessed, almost addicted to death. So the story goes on. Jesus goes to the tomb after he's told, come and see. And he says, roll away the stone. I mean, he's going to do something. It's probably obvious to folks he's going to do something. And what does Martha say? Jesus, it's been 4 days. It's kind of stinky. Another message of death and lack of hope. It does not stop Jesus from his message of life. The stone is rolled aside, and in a loud voice he says, "Lazarus, come out." And maybe even more important than those lines, Jesus gives the instructions to unbind him and let him go. As I've been praying all morning, I think what we might hear in our culture today, where culture does the best to possess us with fear of death or distress or a variety of things, Jesus is begging us to be unbound, to allow him to unbind us so that we might not be paralyzed with fear of death or fear of a variety of other things, so that we might live and go. I think a great thing you could do with this story is take out Lazarus' name and put your name in front of "come out." Allow that to be your prayer. I want to come back to my friends and their families' climbing escapades. I had a great vision this morning as I was thinking about this sermon of Scotty's youngest son, and out on that sculpture park there is a long leg that somebody has built. You've probably seen it. It's on the side. It's a huge leg. And Scotty's little boy, who can't be older than 6, I mean, that's like a 30-foot statue to him. He just climbed up on that thing and stood on top, stretched his arms out. He was alive and free. Friends, Jesus desires for us to not be afraid, to climb out and to be unbound and go. Go and be proclaimers of good news. Thanks be to God. Let us pray.